In fact, Rick spoke about that at the very first Pixel launch event, that the whole idea of Pixel was to bring the best of Google's hardware, software, and AI in a very cohesive way.
Welcome to the Made by Google podcast, where we meet the people who work on the Google products you love. Here's your host, Rachid Finge.
It is so great to finally see you. That's right, the Made by Google podcast is now a video podcast. So if you're just listening to us right now, head over to Google's YouTube channel if you also want to watch us. Now today, we're celebrating 10 generations of Google Pixel. And what better way to do so than to talk to someone who was part of the original Pixel team. With us today is Vice President of Product Management, Venkat.
This is the Made by Google podcast.
Venkat, welcome to the Made by Google podcast. It is great to have you. Now, you were on the OG Pixel team. I happen to have my own OG Pixel XL here. I'm just wondering, what kind of emotions bubble up when you see the OG Pixel?
Nostalgia, excitement at how far we've come since then. Lots of fond memories of working with the team in the very early days.
Yeah, and we'll get to that because you were there at the very first days of Pixel, even long before your Google story started earlier than that. So how did you start out at Google?
Yeah, I came to Google way back in 2010. I joined the Chrome OS team. This was right after Sundar had announced that we would do an open source program called Chrome OS, and I just wanted to join that team. It's not that I specifically wanted to build laptops, but what they were doing felt so audacious and amazing that I just wanted to be part of the team. So that's the team I got to join. And then over the years, worked on a number of hardware programs at Google, and then eventually made my way over to Android, where there were a number of very exciting products being worked on, and they were all across the Nexus program. And through that, I ended up being a part of the Nexus phone team.
Amazing. And I know a lot of listeners will have warm feelings when they hear Nexus, so we'll get into that. Now, you mentioned Chrome OS. What was it like working for Sundar?
It was a truly incredible experience. I think that's probably the most formative period of me becoming the product manager that I am right now, is having worked with him, worked as a part of the team that he had put together. And what I was always amazed by him, just watching him, was how good he was at so many different things, yet very humble and approachable and willing to coach and teach. So absolutely an amazing experience for me.
We get to the Nexus program first, which is something that a lot of people love, but I'm sure there are also people listening who don't quite know what Nexus is. Can you explain what is Nexus?
Yeah, Nexus was the precursor to Pixel in so many ways. This was the brand name that the Android team used. Every year they would build products in different verticals that they wanted to bring the best of Google to showcase what Android truly can be. It started off with the Nexus 1, if I remember correctly, back in 2010. And then there were several other products along the way that bore the name, but every year there was a phone that the team would ship.
So there were several phones. What was your favorite Nexus product out of the time?
I'm obviously very biased. It's the phone that I got to work on. Nexus 6P is my favorite. I mean, the Nexus 5, before I joined the team, Nexus 5 was another truly inspirational product that I just loved.
Amazing. So you were also then part of the team that decided, you know what, rather than Nexus, we should have a true first-party Google phone. Why did you see that need? Because I guess to most people, it seemed like Google already had its own phones in Nexus. So what was sort of the change you anticipated that was necessary?
Something that became very clear at the time to a number of us was that to truly build a world-class phone, you need to make multi-year investments, very deep investments into trying out the right kind of technology and then trying to incorporate that into a product. And so much work has to go in before you get to that point where you can productize a new technology. And we're talking multi-year bets. We're talking very deep investments. And Nexus program at the time was an annual program. Every year, Google would work with a different hardware partner. It was a very deep relationship. But every year, it's a different partner. So the question that at least I was trying to answer was, among many others, that was one of the big ones for me, is how do we make multi-year deep investments? And the answer felt like a first-party product.
Now, just to make sure I understand properly, if you had an idea and it would take more than 1 year to build it, then you would run into problems with the Nexus program, because there was sort of a cycle of maximum 1 year, and then maybe you talk to another partner, right? And you only have a year to develop stuff. So the most important reason to start with Pixel was, hey, if we want to build something that maybe takes 3 or 4 or 5 years to make, then that's the way to go.
Yeah, I think to be honest, there were lots of really good reasons, but that was one of the big ones for me. I'll give you a great manifestation of that over the years was the Tensor program. Which of course is it's our own silicon effort, and it's as hard as it gets. It's a multi-year long bet that the program started making a few years ago, and that's something that's much harder to do when you're on an annual cycle.
Do you remember what you felt when you heard that this first-party phone was going to happen?
It was exciting. I honestly didn't know what they would say, even though I had an instinct, but hearing, let's go build this phone, let's go work our way towards this program, it is truly incredible. Also high stress, because at the time, and we still do, we had some very loyal fans. And a big part of the question for me was, how do we continue to build a phone that serves that audience really well, because they have invested with us over the years, while also expanding out to serve a broader group of people. So absolutely, that pressure or the magnitude of what we had asked to do and then getting to do it, that was obviously also terrifying.
So when you started working on the first-party phone, did you already know that it was going to be named Pixel, or how did the name come about?
Yeah, I had no idea what we'd end up calling it, but the name itself, I mentioned the Chromebook program. We had a first-party Chromebook that the team had built back in, I think the first one was 2012, if memory serves me right. It was called the Chromebook Pixel, and that was the first Google-built Chromebook. People might remember in later years there was a Pixel Book, which again was a Google first-party Chromebook. So the name Pixel as a Google hardware product had already existed. So I think it made sense. As soon as the decision was made, it felt very clear that that was the right call.
In building that first Pixel, do you remember sort of what you were focused on to have stand out on the device? Because surely it needed to, be different than what was out there. What were the focus points for the first Pixel device?
There was a lot of focus on making the software experience feel cohesive end-to-end, feel like one unified product, and a lot of focus on bringing the best of Google experiences. The hardware was already something that the team was working on. The software was always, bring the best of Google software and applications was always part of Nexus. So that DNA carried over. It was also very clear that AI was going to be a pretty big deal. And so there was a lot of focus also on how do we bring the best of Google AI. In fact, Rick spoke about that at the very first Pixel launch event, that the whole idea of Pixel was to bring the best of Google's hardware, software, and AI in a very cohesive way. At that time, there were lots of different things we were working on, but one of the biggest bets the team had made was computational photography, just to invest very deeply in how do we use AI to make imaging much better. A very specific example is Night Sight, which is the deep bet we made into capturing photos in low light. This was, by the way, a very, very personal thing for me, because I had 2 little children at the time, and the only time I could actually get a photo of them when they were still and looked angelic, the only time was when they were asleep. I didn't dare to turn the light on, so I would take a lot of photos in dim, low lighting conditions, and to me, this was the kind of thing that the phone was solving for me, which was amazing. So at a very personal level, I could see the promise being delivered to an actual user on a daily basis. So that's the kind of bets we were making.
And I guess this is also an example of doing Pixel, being able to work on something for multiple years rather than needing to cut off after 1 year.
Even that one, what sounds like one single thing is a decade long in the making, and a lot of, I think people know and understand that the Pixel phones have the best imaging out there. And I think that doesn't happen overnight. It takes years to build that and continue to stay at the forefront of that.
What is your fondest memory of building the OG Pixel? And what's maybe a memory of maybe a harder or tougher time when trying to get the product over the finish line?
Lots of fond memories, as I was mentioning, just being able to think about the software experience in a very holistic way, learning all the amazing things that were happening across Google, because that was a part of the job, was to try and understand what are people working on across Google, how can we bring that to the Pixel phone, meant that I got to go around and understand what others were doing. And just seeing the breadth and the depth across all of Google, everything that people are working on, some truly amazing lessons from that point, from that period.
And anything that was sort of hard to get right? What was something that maybe caused a lot of stress trying to build Pixel and Pixel XL?
This is a tough one. I think building a phone that has Google's own brand on it, not that Nexus was, but this was a step change. There was a responsibility that I think that everybody on the team, again, I was a small part of the team by then, but I think that was definitely something that a lot of us felt that this was real, and this was something that we took very seriously.
So then it becomes October 4th, 2016. It is now time to unveil Pixel and Pixel XL to the world. Where are you that day and how are you feeling?
I was at the event, if I remember correctly, and at MBG today, there's a clip that is being played, that will be played at MBG today, which shows Rick talking on stage about the promise of Pixel. And very honestly, it gives me goosebumps just to think of that clip, because that's exactly the vision for Pixel. And he said it a decade ago. He saw it a decade ago. And that is still exactly what Pixel continues to stand for. So that's actually a memory that I held. And then when it came back up in the context of the 10th birthday, it was just like brought back a lot of very exciting memories for me.
So as you mentioned, you moved to another team. Now you're back for the 10th generation Pixel. Of course, there is so much that has changed between the OG Pixel and Pixel 10 series, but probably there's some commonality in there as well. What would you say is a commonality or a common thread that all the Pixels carried between the very first one and the 10th generation?
Yeah, I was just mentioning the MBG Made by Google event that's happening today, and what Rick had said at the very first launch event. And the line is something, or the sentiment that he expressed was along the lines of, we want to bring the best of Google across the full stack, hardware, software, and AI. I think that is still very, very true. And that is what the program still stands for.
So some clear commonalities between the first Pixel and the 10th generation. What do you see in terms of differences now that you're back on the Pixel team?
Oh my God, so much is different now in such amazing ways. Let me see, the lineup, it's a lot bigger, serves a much broader variety of consumer needs, all the way from the Fold, a really powerful device for immersive entertainment or for productivity use cases, all the way down to the A series, which is a very accessible product for a lot more people. We now have a number of ecosystem products, the watches, which I just love, the watches, the buds, just expanding out the overall Pixel experience for someone who wants to track fitness or want great audio. I think the fact that we have this entire lineup is amazing.
So let's zoom in on AI and then that combination, hardware, software, AI. I think, the jargon for that is the full stack. But what does it actually mean to own the full stack, and why is that important for AI?
It goes well beyond AI. So let me start at the higher level and then we'll come back to AI in a second. But I mentioned early on about the need to make deep technology bets over multiple years and having the patience that if you want to build something that might take 2 to 4 years to build, then you have a program that can continue where you are inserting those over time as they get ready. So what are those bets and how do they stack up? If I go top to bottom, there are all the software experiences, call them apps, AI, all of that. There's the operating system, Android, and then below that is the hardware, which is a lot of the things that users of the phone interact with, right? The display, the camera, etc. And then you go even deeper into the internals of the phone, and it's the silicon that powers a lot of the capabilities. So the CPU, the GPU, the image processing hardware, the TPU for AI compute, all of that. And each of these span multiple years of bets. So for example, something like silicon, you have to decide years in advance the optimizations you're going to have in terms of how big it's going to be, how power hungry it's going to be, how powerful it's going to be, how much space will it take up, where do you spend the budget, if you will, is it on the CPU or on the TPU or on something else? And all of these decisions are actually have to be made very early on because it's a multi-year cycle to build a single chip. So when I say full stack, what I mean is the ability to look down the road and anticipate what you're going to build, but layer it all the way through the stack down to silicon because those bets you're making already for a phone that might ship 2 to 3, 4 years from now.
So if we look at Pixel 10, what kind of features do we have today that are perhaps new that only exist because of the full stack that we've been investing in for so many years?
Yeah, there are several. Let me pick one that's very interesting. Today we announced ProRes Zoom, which is 100x zoom. And that is enabled by a combination of really deep computational photography work, as well as capabilities that the Tensor chip delivers. And that Tensor chip was conceived of years ago and built up over the last several years to be delivered into this phone. But the computational photography work, the last parts of it were actually done just in the last year. So the ability to look down the road and say, this capability will unlock something like that, and be able to envision that and have a team that can deliver on that full promise, that they can deliver the hardware capability and then have software that can take advantage of that hardware capability when you're finally delivering the product. I think that is the kind of capability, but ProRes Zoom is maybe a terrific example of how that comes to fruition when it all works together well.
There are so many AI features in Pixel 10. It's hard to maybe pick a favorite, but if you had to pick a favorite, which one is it?
Favorite ones, I'd have to say, are Live Translate and Magic Q. They're so useful in very specific contexts, and as they get more powerful, I think they're everyday features that can be used on a daily basis.
Do you remember the first time that you could try it out?
Actually, the first time I saw it in use, and this was during a demo, it is magical. Like I said, it's like sci-fi. You're talking on the phone, and again, if you travel to other countries and you call, and then there's a person on the other side who doesn't quite speak your language, the ability to not just translate, but to translate in real time and to translate in the speaker's voice, it is magical. So, and the first time I saw it, I couldn't quite believe what I was hearing. And again, here's a personal example. My mom lives in India and she doesn't speak English. My kids grew up in the US, they speak English. And when they speak, there's a lot of broken phrases that they use to communicate with each other. And I know a lot of things go unsaid because neither of them can quite express what they want to say in a way that they think the other side will understand. And I can't wait for the day when they can actually converse when we call home without having to do that.
So tell me about Magic Q. You mentioned that is one of your favorite features. Why is that? What excites you about it?
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever had to call up a hotel or an airline about a reservation, something's gone wrong. It's a stressful moment because something's gone wrong with the travel plan and you're trying to fix it. You get on the call and then the agent asks you a question like, okay, what's your booking code or whatever it is. I don't know about you, but that's me then furiously switching screens, trying to find the email and doing the search. What Magic Q does, I'm giving you a very specific example of the kinds of capabilities that it brings to the phone, is that when you make the call and the call gets answered, Magic Q, with your permission, has access to the information, and then it brings out the information that it expects you will need. So your code for your flight reservation is right there, so you don't have to go looking for it.
Let's talk about Gemini for a minute. I'm sure you use it a lot. How has your experience been on Pixel 10 while building it? And is there sort of a favorite Gemini feature that stands out to you?
Gemini, not every day. I use it every single day. It is so amazing to see how much it's progressing, and I can feel the difference even in the span of weeks, how much better it gets. And of course, I use it across multiple products, including obviously the Pixel. So one of our goals has been to deliver the best possible Gemini experience on our phone. Also asked me, what is the one thing that I like doing, or what's my favorite part of Gemini? I have to say it's deep research. There's a the space I work in, like a lot of areas I'm sure, is very complex. And so if I really want to understand something in a very deep way, literally as the name says, like deep research, it's just amazing. And then the ability then to go really deep into a topic and ask more questions and explore different parts of the answer that comes back in a very natural conversational way. 3 years ago, if you had told me that's possible, hang on. A year ago, if you had told me that'd be possible, I would have not quite believed it. And the fact that I now have an expert at my fingertips, it's insane.
So if we look where we are today with AI, with all the advances of Gemini, or think about features like, live translation or Magic Queue that we have in Pixel 10 now, is that already what you were thinking about back in 2016 or even earlier when you started work on Pixel?
I think the phone being the most personal device even back then, and it continues to be that the device that everybody carries with them everywhere, and making the phone a much more of a proactive and a personal companion, and anticipating what you need and providing it to you to reduce the friction in everything you do every day. I think that is definitely what a lot of us were aspiring to back then, even if the exact details might not have been clear at the time and might not have been exactly what we're seeing today, but that was the direction that we're going in.
Now, Venkat, this season we're bringing in questions from our Pixel super fan community. We have a question for you as well. It is from Sebastian, and he asks, "Hi, I've been on Team Pixel since Pixel 2, and I've always wondered what is the most difficult decision that has to be made when designing a Pixel product?" I guess everyone who works on Pixel has a different answer, so I'm really curious what your take is.
For sure, yeah. First, Sebastian, thank you. Thank you for being with us almost the whole time. That's not something I take for granted, that we take for granted at all. The hardest thing for me as a product manager is what we don't include, whether it's at a program level, what products we don't build, or what features, functionalities, capabilities we don't include. The number of things that we work on that are incredible but aren't yet at the bar that we want to be able to ship to our users. And then having to make a decision to not include it in the product, whether it's for a focus reason or because we're not quite there yet. And I mentioned the investments that we make for multiple years. We know we can intersect the following year, but it still feels painful to then say, not yet. And that's always a hard call to make. So that, to me, that is the tough one.
Well, I can only say congratulations on Pixel 10. I think it is a great device, a great set of choices you made for this year. And I hope you do find the time to celebrate a little before you move on to what's next for the journey of Pixel. Venkat, thank you so much for joining the Made by Google podcast. Hope to see you again soon.
Thanks so much, Rachid.
Thank you for listening to the Made by Google podcast. Don't miss out on new episodes. Subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts to be the first to listen.